Okay. Hi, this is Mr. Moreno yet again for another wonderful episode. This is for Part 7, Chapter 3.1, and this one's called Weather Changes as Air Masses Move. So, one thing that might have been confusing is an air mass. Air, if you think about it, a gas doesn't really have a form, right? So, that's why I drew it like with no actual shape. But even though it doesn't have a form, this gas can come together like a big ball of gas that moves together. How does that happen? Well, if this amount of air is sitting, for example, on a really hot desert for a long time, eventually it becomes dry and hot, just like the desert. The properties of the land affect the air. And eventually, because if you remember, the Earth is rotating, this air moves. This air moves following those currents we read about in chapter 2. And when this air moves, it is now a mass of warm air. It is called a warm air mass. Now, if this warm air mass pushes a cold air mass, or is pushing some other, like maybe not so warm, not so cold air mass, that is called a warm front. This area where one air mass touches another air mass is called a front. And if you see on page 83, it shows you how they move. It shows you that a warm front would move over a cold mass, and a cold mass, if this is the one moving, it would move under the warm air, and that is because cold air is heavier than warm air. And why is that? Well, you'll learn later, but not right now. All you need to know is that warm air usually goes over and cold air usually goes under. If it is the warm air that is pushing, we call that a warm front. If it is the cold air that's doing the pushing, we call that a cold front. And if they're both pushing but they're not really going anywhere, I think you read about it on page 82, that is called a stationary front. Stationary means it's not moving. They're both pushing, and eventually if we wait long enough, actually one of them will move the other one. So the other thing we wanted to talk about really quick were high pressure and low pressure systems. The things you have to know about high pressure systems is that it's when the air goes down. If you see on page 84, I don't know if that's clear, but the high pressure system, the high pressure center has the air coming from up here and going down and spreading to the lower pressure places. And this usually causes things to be hot or dry. So I remember when I was young, I saw the H, I thought that meant hot. But it doesn't mean hot, it just means high pressure system. But if you think about it, it's kind of the same thing because it brings hot or dry weather. Now, low pressure system, and again, when I was young, I used to think this meant low temperature. It means low pressure. But it usually brings stormy or wet conditions. And in fact, if you ever follow hurricanes will usually tell you how strong they are based on exactly how low this pressure is. And this low pressure determines the power of those winds. So that's all. Okay, bye.